How's it, Grant here, and welcome to my camera comparison between the latest Pixel phones from Google, the Pixel 6 Pro, as you can see right here, and the Pixel 6. Now, Google has decided to price these phones competitively, with the Pixel 6 coming in at $599 and the Pixel 6 Pro coming in at $899 here in the US. Now, both these phones offer the Tensor chipset, Google's first mobile system on a chip, and they both have very similar camera setups. So what do you get for a $300 difference on the Pixel 6 Pro? What they both have in common is the rear-facing main camera at 50 megapixels. They also have the same ultra-wide angle camera at 12 megapixels. The Pixel 6 Pro has a 48 megapixel telephoto lens capable of a 4x optical zoom, and the Pixel 6 omits that lens. And the Pixel 6 Pro has upgraded the front-facing camera to an 11 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera that can record up to 4K video. And the Pixel 6 still retains the same 8 megapixel front-facing camera from the Pixel 5 that tops out at 1080p video. And so I think you're gonna have to decide for yourself if these camera differences are worth the $300 because these are really the main differences on these two phones. And so I'm gonna show you a bunch of photos and videos so you can decide for yourself if you really need that telephoto lens and if that front-facing camera is a big enough upgrade for you, or if you really prefer to save that $300. So go ahead and take a look at all the photos and videos and let me know what you think and which one you prefer. Alright, so here's a rear video test of the Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, as you can see right there. And they are both actively recording here from the ultra wide angle lens on each at 4K 30 frames per second. And so I'll just pan around here so you get a feel for what these ultra wide angle lenses look like. And they're exact same lenses, exact same cameras here on the ultra wide, so this should look the same. They both have the same tensor system on a chip from Google, so everything should be processing exactly the same, and I wouldn't be surprised if it looked exactly the same, but that's why we do test, just to see if it really will look the same. And again, we'll go into the main lens on each here, so let's go to the main lens on the Pixel 6 and on the 6 Pro. So nice that you can actually switch between lenses while actively recording. And same thing here, they both have the same 50 megapixel main sensor here, so this should also be looking very much the same. You can see the fall colors coming in, which is really nice. Pan around here, pan back up into that sky, and let's go ahead and pan over here to the right and test zoom here. So this is where they're going to differ. You've got let's go to 4x digital here on the Pixel 6, and then we will to a 4x telephoto or optical zoom there on the Pixel 6 Pro. You saw it snap in right there. So this is digital on the Pixel 6 and optical on the 6 Pro. And so the Pixel 6 can go all the way up to a max 7x digital zoom there, and we can go to 7x digital just to match it here on the 6 Pro, just to compare. And then we can go all the way into a max 20x digital zoom there at 4K on the 6 Pro. So that's where they're going to differ, the long range zoom and the optical zoom on the 6 Pro versus all digital on the regular 6. So let's go ahead and test autofocus on the post first with the standard 6. Focused up nice and quick and away. So really quick focus and refocus from the standard Pixel 6 here. Nice shallow depth of field or bokeh background blur, natural from that large sensor. And let's go ahead with the 6 Pro, same thing, really fast, snappy autofocus and refocus away. And one more time. Same thing, same large 50 megapixel sensor, so same nice, natural, shallow depth of field. So let's go ahead and test stabilization by walking down the stairs. So you can see what that looks like here at 4K on both these lenses. And they both should be looking pretty stable here, and we'll start jogging just to stress them out a little bit and see. And we'll pull up here and pan up into the afternoon sky to see how it handles that really bright afternoon sunlight there. So this will be a front-facing video test of the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, as you can see right there. They are both actively recording from the front-facing camera at 4K on the Pixel 6 Pro, that's its max resolution, and 1080p, which is the max resolution on the standard Pixel 6. So same 8 megapixel main front camera sensor on the Pixel 6 as the Pixel 5, and then you've got an upgraded 11 megapixel ultra wide angle sensor on the 6 Pro here that can record up to 4K. And so I'm starting outdoors to give you a feel for what it looks like here in the afternoon, and then in some pretty ideal light conditions in the shade, not too harsh light. So you can see what these look like here in some fairly optimal light conditions outdoors here. So as I move forward, you can see the different light conditions here with the sun coming down right in front of me and how that changes the picture quality, the exposure, everything else now that the harsh lighting is shining down right in front of me. And so let's go ahead and pan around to give you a feel for what this looks like here with the changing light conditions. Also, I've got speech enhancement turned on, so that should block out a lot of the background noise, wind noise, etc. So pay attention to the audio and see how that sounds here on both the 6 and the 6 Pro. And now we're back to where we started. I'll just start walking to test stabilization so you can see how these front cameras compare as far as stabilization is concerned. So let me know what you think about the upgraded camera on the Pixel 6 Pro and if it looks any better than the previous camera here on the standard Pixel 6. So here's some rear-facing video on the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro. This is at 4K, 30 frames per second, starting with the ultra-wide-angle camera on each. So I just want to give you a feel for what this looks like, and it should be looking the same because they are the same cameras, same tensor processor, everything else, but let's see how this actually comes out. So let's go ahead and switch lenses now. We can move into the main lens on each. So again, really nice to be able to switch lenses while actively recording here. And this is now the main sensor on each of the phones here. You can see there, again, same main camera, so this should also be looking Very similar, if not exactly the same. You can see it's a cloudy night, clouds in the sky there, and how it handles that bright street light. Both are looking pretty good, not flaring it out too bad at all, if at all. So nice job there. And let's go ahead and pan this way and start walking to test stabilization, as well as to test how they perform as you move over to a much darker area here. So as we get around the corner, it's going to be much darker than that previous scene, and we'll see how each of these cameras handle that light. Also, let me know how the stabilization is looking, if it's looking any jittery. That tends to happen at night, so pay attention to that stabilization there. And as we round the corner, it is definitely much darker, and both of these cameras are trying to brighten up the scene a little bit more than I'm actually seeing with my own eyes here. Let's go ahead and pan up into the sky. You can see again a cloudy night, so you can see some of those clouds and how well defined they are or not. Gives you something to fixate on. Let's go ahead and move this way down this darker alleyway with some lighting, so a little bit of a mixed lighting situation here. So this is how the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro look here in some low light at 4K 30 frames per second. Let me know what you think here. So here's some front-facing camera footage from the Google Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro. In a bit of low light here, we're starting out in a pretty well-lit area just to give you a feel for how these front-facing cameras perform in some optimal lighting conditions. And of course, the Pixel 6 can only record up to 1080p, 30 frames per second. The Pixel 6 Pro can record up to 4K, which it's doing right now. And so right off the bat, I noticed that there's a color temperature difference here, with the Pixel 6 Pro looking a little bit more warm than the Pixel 6, which is a little bit on the cooler side. And so I'm thinking, if anything, the Pixel 6 is a little bit more color accurate. It's warm-ish, but not too warm. And that's kind of what I'm seeing right here. There are some warm lights around me, but not as warm as the 6 Pro is making it out to be. Also, the 6 Pro has a lot more noise in the picture. In my previous test, I've seen the same thing. A lot of noise from the front-facing camera in any kind of a low-light situation, whereas the standard Pixel 6 doesn't look to be nearly as noisy here. So let's go ahead and start walking to test stabilization and give a feel for what that looks like here side by side on both of these front-facing cameras. And also so I can move over to a little bit of a different lighting situation, a little bit more complicated light, a little bit more difficult light, much darker area here. I'll also be passing by this water fountain to my right, so pay attention to that. They both have speech enhancement on to help with the background noise cancellation and wind reduction, so that should be helping it out here. So pay attention to the audio against that fountain and the sound of my voice. And let's go ahead and pan this way so you can see the really bright street lights behind me and how the front-facing cameras handle that. They're actually both handling that very well, not flaring them out too badly considering how really bright those lights are. So moving back over here, we'll go back into this area here so you can see these cameras side by side. This is a much darker area here, and both of these front-facing cameras are definitely brightening up the scene much more than I'm seeing. It's much darker than what both these cameras are seeing and showing, and that's coming at the expense of some noise here. And so that's going to wrap up this camera comparison between the Google Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. So let me know what you think about both of these phones here. Again, major difference being that the 6 Pro has the telephoto lens on the rear and the new front-facing camera, But as far as what I can see, the front-facing camera on the Pixel 6 Pro needs some work, especially in low light. The color temperature is a little bit off, and there's a lot more noise than the standard Pixel 6 with the older front-facing camera sensor. And as far as telephoto lens, it depends if you really need it. I mean, it's a $300 difference between these two phones, and I think the telephoto lens on the Pixel 6 Pro is really great. Takes some really nice, sharp macro photos, some nice, actually portrait shots without having to use portrait mode. Really nice, natural, shallow depth of field of bokeh on the Pixel 6 Pro telephoto lens. But if you look at them side by side, unless you have a really keen eye, I don't think you're going to be able to tell the difference between the digital zoom on the Pixel 6 and the telephoto zoom on the 6 Pro. I think again, like I said, if you have a really sharp eye, you'll be able to tell the difference. But if you just glance at both of them, you won't be able to tell so much. So I think it's just going to come down to what you really need. Do you really think you need a telephoto lens? Do you like the front-facing camera more? I'm sure hopefully it'll improve after some software updates on the 6 Pro, but I wouldn't count on anything improving. I'll just buy it for what it is today. So as far as the $300 difference, I'm not so sure, but there are some other minor differences. I think both of them are great in price, great this year. So it really comes down to what you think. So let me know. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Did you get a 6 or 6 Pro? Which one do you like better in this camera performance test? Let me know. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. And as always, thanks for watching.